Hey guys, and welcome back to Chaos Head NoAH. Last episode was quite the banger, to say the least. Uh, yeah, I don't have much to say. I kind of just want to keep going. I've been waiting for so long. I want to get started. Upon opening a glass door, the very moment Remy entered what appeared to be a lobby, a twitch of fear ran through her. A chill breeze, cold enough to freeze her over, crept up her legs. This is why you wear leg. This is why you wear stockings, SMH. There was no sign of anyone. A fact that was obvious for this place, and this place alone. And yet, when Remy thought about what awaited her ahead, she could not help but wish that someone could have been there with her. Before her was a soundproof door, a door akin to those of a movie theater. From a small crack within that gateway, the chilled breeze came wafting through. The breeze was accompanied by a white haze, a haze akin to the smoke that rose from dry ice. Remy fiercely bit down on her lips. In her hands was her D sword, already real booted.
だから大丈夫。だから怖がっちゃダメだ。
How does her hair not get tangled in those things? Desperately telling herself that, she gulped a single time before proceeding to burst open the soundproof door with her shoulder. Oh no! Mimi's eyes went wide at the scene she saw before her. There stood a device that was beyond enormous. Enshrined in the center of the dome-shaped room, it could be described only as a monster. Why am I getting a weird sense of deja vu from this? I'm pretty sure that whatever we're looking at here, this thing, is probably Project NoAH. I don't know where we are, where she is, what she's doing. But I somehow have the utmost confidence that this thing right here is Project NoAH too, and that, yeah, I've got deja vu. I feel like I've seen it before. Where? Remy's eyes went wide at the scene she saw before her. There stood a device that was beyond enormous. Enshrined in the center of the dome-shaped room, it could be described only as a monster. An ominous sound rang faintly throughout the spacious room. It was a low-pitched noise, akin to the deep growl of a beast. A sound that signified the device's operation.
の圧
Yup! How the hell did I know that?
もう動いてるんだ。
君のおかげですよ。
A voice replied to Remy's vexed murmurs. The moment she heard that voice, Remy felt her very soul tremble. There he
崎
is.
畑リミ。1年半ぶりですね。
This dude has such a large chin. Oh my gosh. You're so weird looking. Not at all what I expected when I saw you from behind. Remy's instinct was to be engulfed in fear. Shivers rose from the depths of her heart. Abominable memories attacked her consciousness. Her grim past was on the brink of being resurfaced. To endure such a threat, Remy strengthened the grasp on her D-sword and lightly shook her head. Once she regained her hold, she shifted her gaze toward the voice. Right beside the enormous device, NoAH too, was him. The figure of a man donned in a suit, and by his side
ちゃん。
Oh, crap. Was Nishijo Nanami held captive? Her uniform was torn, and a bandage soaked with blood was wrapped around her right wrist. Her head hung toward the floor, and she looked terribly, terribly pale. Faced with such a pitiable sight, Rimi was at a loss for words. Crucified in Jesus of Nazareth's likeness. No, what held her now could not be called a cross. It was something far different, for it took the shape of pure, unadulterated malice. The entirety of this world's evil, the entirety of this world's disorder, the entirety of this world's immorality. It would be no exaggeration to refer to it as a symbol sculpted to those very attributes.
君がこの1年半どこで何をしていたかについて興味はありませんが、困りますね。あまりうろちょろされると。
The man, Norose Genichi, spoke in a peaceful tone, but his voice was embedded with the sharpness of a blade. Doing everything in her power not to sink to her knees, Rimi glared back at Norose.
ナナちゃんを離して。
ほう。まさかここに来たのはお友達を助けに来たという理由ですか？
ナナちゃんを離して。その子は何も関係ないでしょ。
では直接話してみてはどうですか？
Norose's offer left Rimi confused. She was acting brave, but in truth, the moment she had seen Norose's face, her heart had been seized by fear, and her legs had begun to tremble. Unable to move an inch from where she stood, she called out to the crucified Nanami.
ナナちゃん。
Nanami's head ever so slightly stirred. Her eyes, which had been closed until that very moment, opened faintly. She raised her head, and her hollow eyes fell upon Rimi.
リミさん。大丈夫。今助けてあげるから。
In the middle of Rimi's sentence, Nanami's face was twisted in pain. Her face was pale, and her breathing labored.
痛いよ。右手が痛いの。
Then, with very little resistance, Nanami's body slid off the cross.
ナナちゃん。ねえ、リミさん。
Without getting up from the floor, Nanami lifted her head and let her gaze roam about the room. It was as if she was searching for something.
ナナのバングル知らないかな。見つからなくて。ナナのバングルどこにもなくて。
She staggered to her feet, and this time, she searched her surroundings with her left hand.
バングルだね。分かった。私知ってるから。だから私と一緒にここを出よう。病院に行こう。ね。手が痛いよ。ナナはなんでリミさんのことを知ってるんだっけ。前にどこで会ったんだっけ。リミさんなの。リミさんがナナのバングル。嘘。どうして。ひどいよ。
Rimi, who realized that something was wrong with Nanami, instantly looked to Norose. With a scornful grin painted on his face, he simply observed Rimi and Nanami's exchange.
ナナちゃんに何を見せてるの。
That is such a large mouth. Nanami's gaze was fixed on Rimi. Trembling like a newborn fawn, she slowly stood up, and then she held out her right wrist, as if offering Rimi her palm. A bandage drenched in blood. It almost appeared as if her hand were still connected. And yet, one after the other, vibrant scarlet drops fell from the bandage without reprieve. By her feet, a pool of blood grew larger and larger with each passing second. She needs medical attention, fast. But despite how frantic she was, Rimi was unable to get any closer. For getting closer to Nanami would mean getting closer to that man. It frustrated her greatly, leaving her on the verge of tears.
リミさんが持ってたの。ナナちゃん、帰ろう。こっちに来て。どうして持ってくの？返して。ナナのバングル、返して。落ち着いて、ナナちゃん。お兄からもらったナナの大切なあれは誰にも渡したくないの。返して返してよ、ナナちゃん。返して。
Together with her pained scream. Welp! A single drop of blood fell from her right wrist. Before it had the opportunity to hit the ground, the drop crystallized at high speed. Originating from nothing, with the drop at its center, a mineral-esque object burst into view. It was as if a carapace formed from minerals had ripped through a rift in space. In the blink of an eye, it took shape. Oh, gosh. It resembled a cross far more than the object that had previously held Nanami. Or perhaps it was a sword which pierced itself perpendicularly, as if rejecting all.
これはディソード。返してよ、お願い。
And Nanami, as if embracing it, held it close to her chest. Tears, born from the sadness within her, fell upon it. Her D-sword flicked scarlet, as if one with her pulse.
でないとリミさんのこと許さない。そんなナナちゃんもキガロマニアックスだったの？今日だけはナナのわがまま受け止めてよ。
What is going on here?
I saw Nanami crying. She was hanging her head low, and while she was trying her best to hold them in, tears ran down her pained face all the same. I took one look at her, and then I returned my gaze to the ceiling, resuming my mission of counting the rusted spots.
抜かれたって僕には何もできないよ。僕は妄想の存在なんだから。妄想の。
そんなこと言わないでよ。お兄が妄想のはずないじゃん。だってナナは小さい頃のお兄のこと知ってるもん。いつもナナに世話かけさせて、ちっとも頼りにならないけど、でもお兄は昔からずっとナナと一緒だったよ。
Wait, she was right. It was just as she said. I had memories from when Nanami was little. I had memories from my childhood. I had memories of watching the news reporting on the bus accident my classmates had been in. The one that had happened on the field trip I hadn't been able to go to. I even remembered my teacher, Mr. Saito, who had passed away in the accident. The words of Rimi, a total stranger, or the words of Nanami, who I'd grown up with.
They're both true. You have memories from your elementary school days, but your middle school days are a gap.
It went without saying which to believe. The right person to believe was in Rimi. The right person to believe was Nanami. If Nanami was real, that meant that I, too, was real.
But is she real? Which Nanami is the real Nanami? Whose Nanami is that Nanami?
Nanami.
I extended my hand toward her. Nanami's existence was my one and only hope. Sole existence that would save me.
助けて。Nanami。助けて。
Better not be dude in a rucksack.
If Nanami's warmth was real, then I could prove that I was real too. Nanami, who had been crying from loneliness, wiped away her tears, looked at me with her reddened eyes, smiled at me with her tearful smile, and
抱きしめてくれる？
I got a bad feeling about this.
I nodded. Then again. Then again. Then once more. By doing so, if I could save Nanami, by doing so, I could save myself. I would gladly hug this bratty little sister of mine, no matter the time or place. I would hug my one and only sister in this world, the one that shared my blood.
Nanami. 助けて。
I wanted to feel her warmth as soon as I could, and so, opening my arms to welcome her into my chest, I prepared to hug her. Tightly, ever so tightly.
鬼。
But right at that very moment,
Yep.
Nanami's body was enveloped in a faint light, and she burst into countless blue particles. One after another, the particles burst like bubbles in the air in which my arms remained extended, never receiving the hug I so desired, my chest never feeling the warmth I so desired. Right before my very eyes, Nanami had vanished.
Was that some kind of astral projection or something? Could it be that, that stuff with Rebe actually happened after this scene? She woke up. With only her left hand, Nishijo Takumi tightly embraced the D-sword that had been born of her own blood. Her right arm, meanwhile, only lay upon it, born of her own blood. Like, she saw it in her blood or something. Her blood, seeping from the bandage on her right wrist, slowly ran down the sword's fuller.
痛い。知ってたの？ナナちゃんがギガロマニアックスだって。
Rimi's question was directed at Norose, who had evidently chosen to remain a spectator. No matter how much Rimi glared his way, he always retained the same composed look on his face.
偶然の産物というものですよ。
ナナちゃんにひどいことしたくせに何が偶然なの？
君の時のような苦労はしませんでした。我が社にはすでに 覚醒させるためのマニュアルが確立していますから。もっとも西条匠にだけはそのマニュアルも通用しませんが、イレギュラーな化け物は扱いづらいことこの上ない。
化け物だなんて言わないで。
君も化け物だからですか？
そういう話はしてない。
虚無から生まれたものだからと言い換えた方が良かったですね。
Averting her gaze, Rimi bit her lip in frustration. Her trembling had yet to cease. In direct opposition to her wish to save Nanami, her legs refused to move. It was as if they had taken root inside the floor. Norose, meanwhile, caressed Nanami's head almost lovingly, acting as if he was under no threat whatsoever. Nanami had no reaction to this. She simply hung her head low as she repeatedly drew shallow breaths.
闇のある一点だけを灯しているスポットライト。その周囲には無数の死体が転がっているのでしょうが、誰にも見えない。君自身にもです。
そんな話やめて。
例えば君が自殺をしたら、スポットライトは数十センチ横にずれて君を闇で覆ってくれるでしょう。そして何も知らない別の誰かが代わりにスポットライトを浴びる。
Prompted by Rimi's sharp tone, Norose shrugged his shoulders, then returned to silence.
痛い。ナナちゃんを解放してほしいんだけど。
拘束は解きましたが、
連れて帰る。
構いませんよ。もう用済みです。
ナナちゃん、入ろう。その件は消して。だったらバングル返して。返すから。
Rimi knew where Nana's hand was being kept. On that day. On the night Rimi's hand had been delivered to Takami's room. It was her hand, oh gosh. After Takami had collapsed from sheer humiliation on the roof of O Front, Rimi had retrieved the hand from within the refrigerator. Shogun was the one who had it now. It was in cold storage to keep it from decomposing. The bangle, too, was...
もういいから。もらったの。ナナのだよ。バングル。勝手に持って行って。ひどいよ。
Nanami's voice, which had only been speaking in incoherent mumbles, was gradually growing more and more intense.
落ち着いて深呼吸して。自分をしっかり持って。
Why doesn't she just tell her that she has her bangle?
一つ聞きますが、
Or, well, I guess she did, but... Norose's sudden interruption elicited a click of Rimi's tongue, though only in her mind.
西条匠にとっては、君たち二人のうち、どちらがより重要度が高い存在ですか？
Rimi cast her eyes downward.
リミさんなんか。
While Nanami instead raised her head. A sparkle returned to her once empty eyes, a glaring, brilliant shine, one that warranted only a single descriptor: abnormal. In a panic, Rimi frantically attempted to brace herself, only to be frozen in place by the sudden darkness. It was as if all the lights had been turned off. Rimi had no way of knowing whether it had been intentional or accidental.
負けちゃダメ。
Rimi whispered so in an attempt to encourage herself. Her voice made the air undulate, but it melded into the dark before long. She then noticed that she could no longer hear NoAH 2's growling rumbles.
The dark. It always reminds me of back then. Remy tried looking around, but all she could see was darkness, spread throughout every corner. No speck of the concept known as light existed. Could she not see because it was dark? Or could it perhaps be her sight was not working properly? She had even lost the ability to tell up from down. She could not tell where she was anymore. Her 5 senses had been eroded by darkness, and now her body was unable to recognize anything. As if her body had been turned into a gas, as if her consciousness had slipped away from its vessel. Past and present fused as one, and Remy's memories began to intermix. When was now? When was the past? Then, in the world ruled only by sheer darkness, a single ray of light shone down. And there, within that circular spotlight, was Remy, cradling her knees close to her chest. Remy was seeing this very scene from within the darkness. It's the same as back then. Back then, Remy had nothing. Before she knew it, she had been confined and tortured. But rather than anything physical, the psychological pain she had suffered had been far greater. A daily life born from the depths of hell. A daily life consisting solely of enduring. How she had been before that, Remy did not know. When and how had she been confined? For how long had she been tortured? That Remy did not know, but something told her that this was not due to memory loss. The moment she suddenly opened her eyes, a consciousness known as herself had been born, or so she felt. Perhaps the one inhabiting this body before her, unable to escape from all the pain, had ended her own life within her delusions. And then perhaps as a new her, a new personality, the current Remy had been born. Perhaps there had been countless other hers before her. Even the name Sakihata Remy may have been different each time. To myself, I don't exist. Something moved amid the darkness. Remy stood up, then slowly began to move toward it. And as she moved, so did the spotlight. And what she found was a dead Remy lying on the ground. Without ever looking at Remy, a whisper flowed from Remy's mouth.
あなたは何番目？私は
Oh, guys. Ew, man. Fish eyes, covered in blood, emaciated. Jeez. Remy's eyeballs twitched incessantly. An endless amount of tears ran down from the corners of her eyes. Her D-sword then slipped from her hands, and Remy sank to the floor. Much like a child would, she covered her face with her hands and weakly shook her head. I'm sorry. I couldn't do it. Nanami stared at her with a vacant look on her face, while Norose let out a short, disinterested snort.
Nanami had vanished without a trace. She had turned into bubbles before my very eyes. Her substance had simply ceased to exist.
どこだよ。 出てきてよ。いるんだろ。また、いたずらか。くれてるんだ。やめろよ。
My vision grew blurry from my tears. No matter how many times I wiped them away, the lukewarm droplets kept pouring out. But both this warmth and the feelings making me shed these tears were delusions. I myself was one, after all. None of me had been a delusion. I'd been stupid to believe it would all be okay. My hopes had been crushed just like that.
で、いつ、この妄想って冷めるの？早く冷めてよ。
Not even I knew who I was talking to. But right now, I was fine with anyone. I just wanted to be heard.
この妄想が覚めたら、僕が本当はイケメンなんだ。そうに決まってる。物分かりのいい妹と優しい姉がいるんだ。かわいい彼女と付き合ってて、その子はリミとかセナみたいな電波女じゃなくて、セーラさんみたいないい子なんだ。
あなたは妄想の存在なんだよ。
Groveling on the floor, I buried my head in the mountain of trash and tightly gripped Seraton. I tried my best to avert my eyes from reality as I pounded the floor with my fists, but I couldn't. Mimi's words pummeled my mind relentlessly.
死にたい。死にたいよ。どうして誰も僕を殺してくれないんだ。ねえ、セーラタン殺して、僕を殺して。
そんなに死にたいの？
死にたい。こんなのもう嫌だ。自分の存在が嫌だ。何も考えたくない。生きていたくない。
かわいそうなタッキー。だったらすぐに殺される方法を教えてあげる。
This is why you're my waifu. Seraton always devoted herself to me. Commendably so.
とりあえず外に出るんさ。
外に？
Doing as I was told, I stood up and headed for the door. And then, after nearly tripping and falling over trash countless times, I exited my base. I had no need to question her. Seraton would never betray me. She was my waifu, after all, and she wasn't 3D. Once I was outside, a strange sound hit my ears. This sound, hadn't I heard it somewhere before?
この音を追いかけて。
追いかけたら殺してもらえるの？
そういうこと。
優しく殺してもらえるかな？
私が保証するよ。
よかった。やっと死ねる。
This sound was my Messiah, the bell of salvation that would grant me my passage to the promised land. With Seraton in hand, I set off toward the sound. Whenever I got close to the sound, it would move farther away, almost like it was guiding me somewhere. Every time I seemed to be onto it, it would quickly become distant. Every time I seemed to lose track of it, it would come close and wait for me, as though it had a will of its own.
Yep, it's one of the rucksack dudes.
A sound with a will of its own. It reminded me of Shogun's existence. His face flashed through my mind, but I quickly grew indifferent to it. Whether it was him or someone else, as long as someone killed me, I didn't mind. I even stopped wondering about the true nature of the sound. I was a delusionary existence, and I was gonna die pretty soon, so there was no point in caring. With my head completely empty of all thoughts, like a moth to flame, I staggered after the sound. A barrage of noise now surrounded me. I was unable to differentiate any of them. With a click of my tongue, I tried to find the origin of the clamor, only to gulp instead. Suddenly, without me having realized it, I was standing in Scramble Crossing. It was then that I realized that the clamor was coming from the sheer number of people crammed into the crossing. It was almost jam-packed. Everyone was pushing right up against each other, like a morning train ride during rush hour. Compared to when I'd been broadcasted from the top of Elfront, there was an even bigger number of people here. Now I thought about it. Grim had mentioned something about this. Something about there being a festival at Scramble Crossing tonight. What the hell is this, Sarah? I had nothing but horrible memories of this place. Why did you bring me here?
I have to pick between positive and neutrals. I'll go with neutral.
Where's the person who's gonna kill me, Sarah?
目の前にいるっしょ。
目の前
This tremendous crowd on this cold autumn night. Just what kind of festival can make so many people gather here to the point of there being no room to breathe? Suddenly, the wall of people opened up before me, like I was Moses from the Bible. A single path inviting me in. They were all waiting for one person. Me. It's the reality TV show that's sweeping the nation. Today's episode, the world's most terrifying offline meet. People from all over the net have come to lynch the biggest embarrassment in all of Japan, Nishijo Takumi, right in the middle of Shibuya. Their catchphrase, whose eyes are those eyes?
Offline meet. When members of an internet community meet in real life.
When that long scenario played out in my mind, I laughed. As much as I hated pain, as long as I would die, I'd be more than willing to deal with that much.
僕が死ぬにはぴったりの祭りじゃないか
I had finally grasped what Seraton meant by revenge. I hadn't died the last time I was here, so they had prepared the stage just for me. Forming a lazy smile stemming from the corner of my mouth, I started making my way through the path between the people. At the end of it, I could see various members of the mass media standing next to each other like idiots, cameras and microphones in hand. Both the onlookers and the mass media were incredibly tense. There was a tiny bit of commotion, but nowhere near the amount you'd normally hear at a festival. All the energy they'd had back when I humiliated myself atop O-Front was gone. Everyone looked at me. Their eyes were cold and sharp, staring daggers at me with what felt close to murderous intent. Whether I liked it or not, my expectations were swelling higher and higher. Kill me. Kill me. Kill me. When I looked up, I realized that all four of the enormous jumbotrons were showing footage of me walking through the crowd. I was sure that, just like last time, this was a national broadcast too. If the viewer rate was even 40%, I would die while being watched by approximately 48 billion people. The death of me was no more than a delusionary existence. The death of me who had no value whatsoever. The death of me who was wholly and entirely worthless. Is that what you all want to see? Well, then congratulations. Here you go. It doesn't matter either way to me. As long as I die, I don't care how many people see it. And so, I stood before the battery of cameras and microphones. A swarm of flashes burst into unison. Blinding lights flashed intermittently. Straining my eyes, I fought to endure them. Then, a reporter that was probably in his 40s spoke up. I had seen him on a number of talk shows before.
西尾君、今回はどんなパフォーマンスを見せてくれるんだい？ところで、実は今日の昼に逮捕された貼り付け事件の容疑者は実行犯に過ぎなくて黒幕がいるっていう話があるんだけど、どう思うかな？
I was this random guy acting all buddy-buddy with me. And what was that last part supposed to mean? Was he asking for my opinion? I guess when the media called up the criminal psychology professors every time, and they always said the same standard, uninteresting bullshit, even an amateur like me could serve as a replacement. Regardless, I couldn't have any less of an opinion on what the guy was asking about. I had lost all interest in Nugent. I'd come here to be killed, not to answer questions. I had no energy for it.
それでね、西尾君、ズバリ聞くけど、真犯人と目される人物は通称その目誰の目と言われていて、それは君なんじゃないかっていう噂があるんだよね。
そうかもね。
My whispers were broadcast all throughout Shibuya via the Jumbotron speakers. Commotion ensued. The bloodthirsty atmosphere got even stronger among the people that gathered here. Just kill me already. Set me free. Stop asking me for things. And yet, despite my wishes, the microphones came even closer. They were pushed so violently toward me. The next one would be shoving one straight into my mouth. The next step would be shoving one straight into my mouth. The other reporters, too, were raining questions down on me incessantly.
それは事件への関与を認める発言と考えていいんですか？
現実とゲームとの区別ができなくなるような経験はありますか？
逮捕された小前田容疑者との関係について聞かせてください。
人を殺したのはやはりゲーム感覚だったりします？
In a sense, I was like a video game character. Someone, please reset me. Just get me the game over once and for all.
殺して
As soon as those words left my mouth, the crowd, at the peak of its tension, exploded.
死ね
人でなしきちん
殺してやるよ
地獄に落ちろ。
死刑にしろぶち殺せ殺人鬼
I was overwhelmed by the waves of people, and as the screams and shouts swarmed, I was swallowed up by the undulating masses. I was tossed around and jostled, crushed to nothing, pulverized. Being shoved by people in all directions, my body started floating. My soles left the ground. No matter how much I struggled, I couldn't do anything. I was struck on the head, punched in the arms. None of it was painful enough to kill me. And with no room to breathe, I started to suffocate. But I didn't resist. I entrusted my body to the chaos. And in doing so, the pressure suddenly disappeared, and my body fell to the floor. Seraton fell from my hand and toppled onto the asphalt. Countless feet lined up like trees in a forest, and as they writhed about, my waifu rolled through the gaps between them. Despite extending my hand, I couldn't reach her. Her face, complete with that endlessly radiant smile of hers, the smile that soothed my soul, was stepped on by someone's shield.
タッキー、痛いよ。助けて、タッキー。
Her small body was kicked farther away, and some lady in red high heels ended up crushing her torso.
セーラ
No matter how much I called out to her, no answer came. My one and only ally was gone. I felt like my chest was being crushed by sorrow. I had lost all reason to stay in this world, to live. And when I looked up, surrounded by people as I was, even the night sky was hidden away from me. No one noticed I was there, slumped on the ground. Even though I was right there, even though I was asking for someone to kill me, why was everyone ignoring me? Suddenly, I felt it, right on the nape of my neck. That tingling sensation. God's gaze.
君は
And within my mind,
ここで死んじゃダメだ
a certain voice rang. I gulped
イソードを手に入れて
and firmly gritted my back teeth.
将軍
I searched for that wheelchair among the crowd, for that bastard cosplaying as Darth Spider. So you were the one behind this festival, huh? I knew it. Are you planning to wheel out here and thread me, all while you're in your offensive Darth Spider cosplay? You tried to recreate what happened last time? I wished for death. The entire time I'd been alive, I'd just been some tool for everyone's amusement, and I couldn't take it anymore.
あの時の自称将軍は僕じゃない
I knew it! I knew it! Oh my gosh, it wasn't a typo. I knew it! Ah. Yeah, Suwa had that Darth Spider costume, so was it him?
僕はコスプレはしないよ。
I don't care. Just kill me, please.
あいつらが動き出している。この場は今以上の混乱になるよ。
They...
すべての黒幕。この混乱を引き起こした者たち。混乱を利用して利己を追求しようとする者たち。彼らを止められるのは君だけなんだ。
I stood up. The angry voices kept surging above my head. No one was looking at me. The onlookers and the people from the media were all jumbled together, grabbing each other, cursing at each other, punching each other. Why were they?
沈黙の兵器。NoAHはすでに稼働してる。この混乱が起とされた一番の目的は無差別人体実験。
Something hard hit my head. A sharp pain rang through me. A pain so intense I thought my skull had been broken. My hands automatically shot up to my head, cradling it. As I looked around with tears in my eyes, I found a rock on the ground the size of a fist. A tiny smear of blood colored part of it. Someone had thrown that rock, and it hit me. A throbbing pain coursed through me. Moving my hand toward the source, my fingers touched something sticky. Bringing my hand down in front of my face, I saw blood on my fingertips. My own blood. I heard a dry explosion in the distance, followed by a lady screaming. A gunshot? There were people with guns here? Why was everyone so worked up? Why was everyone fighting each other despite being total strangers? Why was this so chaotic? The villain's sacrifice everyone was waiting for wasn't mine.
渋谷の GE レート、バイオリズムがありえないくらいに上昇してるんだよ。言ったでしょ。無差別人体実験だって。この場にいる人たちは今、見えない攻撃を受けているんだ。
Then I heard a sound, a creaking, rusty sound. A sound akin to a dying woman gasping for air. The sound of a wheelchair. Despite how many people there were, despite the wall of people surging erratically, Shogun moved his wheelchair forward. And without bumping into anyone, without getting dragged into a single fight, he made his way straight to me. Ever so small, with a body of skin and bone, he was covered in wrinkles and looked so frail it was as if he might break at the slightest touch. His eyes were cloudy as could be. I didn't know what he was looking at, nor what he saw through those eyes. I couldn't bring myself to look away anymore, and suddenly the tumult surrounding me began to grow distant.
ずっと君を見ていたよ。
It was the same voice as the time we had first met. It wasn't that strange voice I had heard at O-Front.
君は誰なの？僕は君だよ。
And with those few words, I finally understood.
僕を妄想して生み出したのも神の自然の正体も君だった。 たんだね。
He's the one whose eyes are those eyes.
He was my creator, the existence who had envisioned me within a delusion. Someone who I could never hope to match up to.
君の名前は
西条匠。
The real me. The original me.
君はいくつなの？
君と同い年だよ。君の設定とね。
17 years old. Even though he was so small, even though he was covered in wrinkles, he was only 17 years old.
このままだと世界が死んじゃう。ノア2にあらゆる人の心は支配されちゃう。だから君に託したんだ。
Entrusted. Entrusted what exactly?
意味がわかんないよ。そんなの僕には関係ない。頼むよ。僕を消して。今すぐに消してほしい。
Shogun's wrinkles stirred. He was likely making an expression, but I couldn't see it as anything other than wrinkles shifting on his face.
全部僕のせいなんだ。僕が IR2 を妄想しちゃったせいで。なんとか止めようとしたけど、僕はこんな体だから満足に動くこともできない。それで君を生み出した。君に止めてもらうために。
Yeah, I suspected as much.
そんなの知らない。僕は君のコピーだけど、僕はやりたくない。コピーだけが苦しまなくちゃいけないなんて、そんなの嫌だ。死なせてよ。
君はコピーじゃない。もう一人の僕だ。
つまりコピーじゃないか。君のしてることはすごく残酷だ。
悪かったって思ってるよ。でも他に方法はなかった。今世界の命運は君にかかっていると言っても過言じゃないんだ。だから
そんなのリミに頼めばいいじゃないか。知り合いなんでしょ。
Acquaintances. I'd said that on purpose. I didn't want to think they were lovers or good friends. And so, only then did I realize my feelings. I was jealous of the original me. I was rich, coming from a delusionary existence. What a fucking disgrace. I couldn't believe myself. There was not knowing your place, and then there was this. My own feelings made me want to throw up. My emotions continued to spiral. I wanted to die.
リミはナナミを助けに行って逆に捕まっちゃったんだ。リミはね、僕を救おうとしてくれていた。その理由は君も知っているよね。
あれは空。あの空はどうしてあんなに泣きたくなるくらい青いのかな。
それを望んだから。
私は望んでない。
僕が望んだんだ。ここは君の心象世界であると同時に僕の心象世界でもあるから。
Rimi turned toward me. She stared at me, her face deeply puzzled.
あなた誰？ここには私以外はいないはずなのに、あなたは 別の私。
違うよ。
だったら誰？どうやってここに来たの？私の心の中だよ。ずっと暗闇しかなかった。光は私に当たるスポットライトだけ。それなのにあなたが来た途端に暗闇がなくなって空ができた。
妄想がシンクロしたんだ。君の力がとても強かったから。
そう。
Mimi looked up toward. What? Sorry, I'm trying my best to do a Shogun voice here. Mimi looked up toward the sky once more. It was a clear crystal, azure sky.
私、本物の空見たことないんだ。私っていう人格が生まれた時にはね、もう暗い部屋に閉じ込められてた。心の中も外も闇しかなかった。そこからは絶対に出してもらえないの。私、今死のうとしてたんだ。心を自殺させるの。きっとこれまでの私もそうしてきたと思うし。でもせっかくあなたが空を持ってきてくれたから、この光景を記憶に刻んでおいていいかな。次の私がまたこうして想像できるように。
死にたいの？
うん。
本当の空を見てみたいとは思わないの？
ねえ、空って本当にあるのかな？
あるよ。でも現実の空はこの空よりも汚れてる。
どこにある？あの空はどこにあるの？
君が望めばどこにでも。
望んでいいの？
もちろんだよ。
どうやって望むの？
光は電磁場の波。その振動現象を人の視覚は色として捉えるんだ。自分のデッドスポットに望む色を当てはめてごらん。そうすれば君の望む世界の色を作り出せる。世界は君の望みに応えてくれるよ。
Several days, even months, perhaps, had then passed since that encounter, and one day Remy had come to my hospital room. She and I were fellow patients at the same hospital, fellow possessors of something that transcended human understanding, the power of gigolomania, an attribute we were unsure whether to abhor or take great pride in.
お兄、お客さんだよ。ねえねえ、誰？彼女さん、いつの間に？やるね、お兄ってば。また会えたね。
She was deeply haggard. Her skin was morbidly pale. Her hair was dried and neglected, growing according to its own whims. Her fingernails were cracked. Her eyes constantly squinted, as if dazzled by a brilliant light.
本物の空は見られた？
うん。
Nanami, who had been watching us talking, suddenly clapped her hands in apparent remembrance.
ナナ、お洗濯してこなくちゃ。リミさんでしたっけ？どうぞごゆっくり。
Nanami left the room. Rimi and I vacantly watched her depart. Rimi then turned back toward me.
匠はいつから入院してるの
5年ぐらい。
退院の予定は
ないよ。僕の余命はあと2年ぐらいだと思うし。
私はあなたのおかげで頑張ることができた。終わりなんて絶対にないと思ってた。でもあなたが教えてくれた空を見るまで頑張ろうと思った。そしたら急に外に出してもらえた。用済みになったって言った方が正しいかもしれないけど、
そう。
私はあなたに救われたの。だから今度は私があなたの力になりたい。
そんなの気にしなくていい。わざわざ僕に会いに来なくてもいいよ。君にはこれから普通に生きてほしい。
普通の生き方なんてわからないから。
Rimi's past, Rimi's feelings, Rimi's resolve. My chest tightened as I remembered them all.
なんでリミは僕に近づいてきたの？
彼女は君の近くにいることで、君の行動、君に接触してくる人間のことを監視して、君を覚醒させないようにしていたんだ。彼女を恨まないであげて。彼女はただおせっかいなだけなんだ。
I read that again. A tinge of sadness appeared in Shogun's voice.
巻き込みたくなかったの。彼女は僕がどれだけ止めても聞いてくれなかった。勝手に僕に恩義なんか感じて、本当におせっかいだよ。
リミとナナミは誰に捕まってるの？
プロジェクトノアの責任者、すべての黒幕、野呂瀬源一。かつてリミを捕らえて拷問していた男でもある。それなのにリミはナナミと僕と、そして君を助けるためにあの男のところへたった一人で乗り込んでいっちゃった。
A voice echoed within my head. It uttered the words of Arimi I didn't know. Words she had spoken to Shogun.
リミ？
私実はちょっとした報告があります。ナナちゃんをこれから助けに行こうと思って。
やめるんだ。君はあの男、野呂瀬とはもう会いたくないでしょ。
私って信用されてないな。平気だってば。昔の話だしね。そもそも私の感情とナナちゃんを助けることとどっちを優先させるかなんて決まりきってることだよ。
ナナミを助けるのもプロジェクトノアを止めるのも僕のやるべきことだ。君はそこまでしなくていいんだよ。
言ったでしょ。私はあなたの力になりたいって。それにタクには関わらせたくないの。
おせっかいだね。
にしか言われたことはないけど、ねえ、ちょっとだけ語っちゃっていいかな。タクにね、いろいろひどいこと言っちゃったんだ。しかもそんなことしておいてすごく自分勝手なんだけど、私彼と一緒に過ごした時間はとっても楽しかったって思っちゃってるんだ。何もかもが妄想でまみれたまやかしでしかなかったのに、学生生活もあの学校に私やタクが通っていることも、大地と友達だっていうことも、私がタクと一緒にいようとしたことも、タクの存在そのものも、タクってどうしようもないくらい情けなくて、どうしようもないくらい弱くて、きっと普通の女だったら見向きもしないような男の子なんだよ。なのに私の心には楽しかったっていう気持ちがあるの。なのに私の心にはもっと一緒にいたかったっていう気持ちがあるの。この気持ちって何なのかな。
インプリンティングのようなものかもしれないね。
Imprinting, the automatic assumption present in some animals in which a newborn child recognizes the first thing it sees as its parent. This can occur even if the parent is of a different species than the child. Even after imprinting occurs, it is possible to force a child to change who they recognize as their parent by presenting them with a substitute.
本能っていうことかな。それって意外とロマンチックかも。
君が楽しかったならきっと彼も楽しかったと思うよ。
そうだといいな。私はタクと似たようなものだから、肉体が妄想から作られた存在と、
Yep.
人格が妄想から作られた存在と、
Though not by Takami's delusions, I assume.
どっちも変わらないでしょ。だからタクのこと消したくなかった。消さなくちゃダメだって思ってたんだけどね。でもいつの間にか感情移入しちゃったみたい。タクにはごく普通に暮らしていってもらいたいの。私はタクミもタクも助けたい。ねえ、タクのことはそっとしておいてあげて。
そういうわけにはいかない。ノア2を破壊するために彼は必要だよ。
私が何とかするから。
君はそんなことしなくていい。君こそごく普通に暮らしていくべきだ。
さてと、そろそろ切るね。
リミ、やめて。
本当に大丈夫だって。あなたは何も心配しないで。私が全部決着をつけてくるからね、タクミ。
After it was already too late, Mimi's words sank into my heart. She really was a hopeless meddler. Why did she have to keep fighting so hard? Why did she have to keep acting so selflessly?
私はタクの味方だから。
Memories of Rimi all came back to me. Memories of the short time we had spent together until now. Memories of the feelings that had been hidden behind every word she'd said.
私が一緒にいてあげる。
Over the past year and a half, if I had to summarize what I'd done, it'd mostly be ESO, RMT, and eroge. I devoted myself entirely to those things, all while staying shut inside my base. I'd barely gone to school, and I rarely tried to talk to anyone. Born into this world, I lived as though I were dead. But for the past month or so, that had changed. And even though, as a result of this, I'd been lied to,
朝一緒に学校行って
she had stayed by the side of someone like me.
学校では休み時間にどうでもいいこと話して
She had given me a peace of mind when I was quivering in fear.
お昼休みは一緒にご飯食べて
She had supported the failure that I was, encouraged me.
夕方一緒に帰って
She had embraced me.
帰るついでにたまにどこかのお店に寄ったりして
She had taught a delusionary existence like me the warmth that humanity held.
タックの部屋でちょっとだけおしゃべりして
She could have erased me, and yet she tried to protect me.
それでまた明日ねって手を振って別れて
She'd made memories with me.
そんなのでいいなら私いくらでもしてあげるよ
In my year and a half long life, I can still vividly remember the time I had spent with her. Even now,
そういうの結構憧れなんだ
Rimi's little gestures, Rimi's scent wafting from her hair, Rimi's little sighs and the sound that came from them, Rimi's glimmering eyes, Rimi's cheerful voice, Rimi's tender warmth. Let me see. I was in love with Rimi. How disgusting was that? What a freak. A wry smile crept onto my face in response to my own creepiness. A delusionary existence falling in love? Were feelings of love something that a delusionary existence could feel? Or were they a mere illusion? I really didn't know, but I wanted to be true to these feelings. Rimi saw me as a friend. There's no way she saw me as someone of the opposite sex. Besides, an otaku freak like me wouldn't go well together with her. But even so, even if she didn't love me back, even if it was just for my own satisfaction, even if I was just a delusionary existence, I at least wanted to do something for someone, for Rimi, before I disappeared. It was disgusting that a disgusting otaku freak would fall in love. It was disgusting that a disgusting delusionary existence would fall in love. But so what? Even if it was disgusting, even if it wouldn't go anywhere, I didn't want to brush these feelings away as mere illusions and delusions. The memories of this past month were both Rimi's and mine, mutually recognized between us both. Even if the rest was just make-believe, these memories, and the feelings born from them, were real.
世界を救ってほしい
So Shogun said. I shook my head.
僕は勇者じゃない人間でもない そんな僕に世界を救えとか何を考えてるの？
君には本当に悪いと思ってるけど、君にやってもらうしかないんだ。
自分に謝るなんてバカみたいだ。
I glared at the real me. The real me caught the fake me's gaze.
僕は君が嫌いだ。
僕は君が羨ましいよ。
僕は世界のためになんか頑張らない。世界を救うとかそんなことどうでもいい。
I'd be the one to give meaning to my birth.
ただ僕はリミを助ける。
ありがとう。
The sounds around me started coming back. More and more oil was being poured on the fires of chaos. It had already become a riot. I was hit with the smell of blood. Around me, I heard the sounds of screams, shouts, moans, and a mechanical noise that sounded almost like audio feedback. And all pulled together and overflowed across the crossing.
理想度を手に入れる方法を教えて。
君はすでにそれを知っているはずだよ。
My gaze moved upward, looking for the silhouette of a sword blending into the scenery. Rocks were thrown around, canisters of tear gas made smoke rise from the ground, and people from every direction crashed into me, time and time again. In the center of it all, I focused and sought the sword I had once seen from the roof of Ophant. It had to be visible already. Without a doubt, it had to be here, somewhere. Lost amid the scenery. My D-sword was always right beside me. Seize it.
見つけた。
On the building to the right of 107, there was a vertical billboard. And when I looked toward it, I saw the shape of a sword. Anxiety seeped into me. I swallowed back my saliva. When I had looked from the roof of Ophant, I had been able to perceive its shape. But in the end, I hadn't been able to physically grasp it.
自分の意志を強く持つんだ。迷っちゃダメだからね。君にはもう剣を手に入れる資格は十分にある。
I extended my hand as I stood in place. In order to save someone dear to me, I had to get it, no matter what. No matter what. I gritted my teeth. This wouldn't be like last time. My mind was surprisingly calm. I wasn't afraid. I couldn't be afraid. But it wasn't that I was keeping a cool head. Emotions simmered and boiled inside me. I had something I needed to do.
掴むんだ。
107 was about 100 meters away, and upon overlapping my fists with the sword, I grasped it. Even though I should have grabbed an empty spot in the air, there was something there. It was neither hot nor cold, neither hard nor soft. Keeping my hold on it, I drew it closer to me. Ripples surfaced across the air, and from within those ripples, it slid free. Woo! All too long to be called a sword. Delicate enough to shatter at a moment's notice. Pervaded with phantasmal elegance. Lacking any meretricious features. Absent of all garishness. With an immaculate malice capable of swallowing one's soul whole. On which belonged an awe-inspiring beauty. Linking with my exalted heart, the design of the sinister flames on the handle flickered. I didn't feel even an ounce of weight. Rather, It was as if it was an extension of my arm, as though it had been there from the very beginning, as though it were a part of my body. I didn't feel like I was holding a sword. So this was a D-sword. I grasped it firmly with both hands. I should have been able to reel-boot it now. If I got it to be mutually recognized by my surroundings, the sword would be brought forth into reality. As for how to do it, I didn't know. I simply desired it. I shouted within my heart for it to become reality. All hesitation within me was gone.
Woo! That scream!
The D-sword, as if answering my call, started faintly shining. The flame pattern on the hilt transformed into real flames. Flames which swiftly enveloped the sword. And yet, it felt no heat. Soon enough, those flames were swallowed by the entirety of the sword's body.
Woo!
Together with a fierce impact, the D-sword shone with a crimson light. A number of the people around me were surprised by my sword. However, it was only a handful of them. Only a handful were left dumbfounded by its appearance. The others were too focused on punching and kicking each other. The riots didn't seem to be stopping anytime soon.
この暴動を引き起こしているポーターたちを探すんだ。彼らを持つ機械を破壊すればバイオリズムの高騰も収まる。ポーター、ノア2の端末としての存在。君はすでにそのヒントを見てきたはずだよ。君の頭の中にそれは記憶として刻まれている。
I called forth all that I had seen.
Sua, you bastard!
辛いんですね。
有限会社でしょ。聞いたことある。
返してルナのバングル返して。
地点 L2 の時 0.62 メガ GE ハイスコアです。
我が社ではポーターと呼んでいます。言い換えればマインドコントロールのための部隊といったところでしょう。
All of the things I had unconsciously seen, all the thoughts I had unconsciously read.
僕は盗撮野郎ってことか。お似合いだね。
Shogun calmly gave me orders as I laughed at myself.
チャネルを解放してポーターたちの心を読むんだ。コズピーのように彼らはこのスクランブル交差点のどこかに居場所を探り当てて。
I opened my channel. I didn't have to think about what to do. Without being conscious of it, I enacted it by feel alone. And then, the minds of everyone here, their negative emotions, became visible and instantly flowed into me. Malice, hatred, envy, lust, servility, cowardice, superficiality, corruption, cunning, indecency, hideousness, vulgarity, libido, madness, bloodthirst. It was the manifestation of the unsightly emotions people hid from one More brutal, unequivocal, repugnant than words could ever be. All the negative emotions people held inside them became a torrent of images, and this torrent proceeded to swallow up, shatter, violate my mind. I was verbally abused by words of disdain. Gazes of contempt rained down on me. I was spat on. My nails were peeled off. I was punched in the face multiple times. I was kicked in the ass. My hair was torn out. My nose was chewed to shreds. My eyeballs were gouged out. My tongue was ripped from my mouth. My blood was sucked. I was showered with boiling water and covered with burns. I was...
I'm sorry. I wasn't expecting something so... That's not a funny line. I was just... I just wasn't expecting something so crude. I'm sorry.
I was raped in the ass. My genitals were crushed. All my skin was torn off. My arms that were broken. All my bones were broken. I was beaten with a blunt weapon. I was stabbed with a blade. My organs were gouged out. My neck was strangled. My flesh was eaten by a giant beast. I was thrown off of a high place. I drowned in a pool of water. I had my entire body burned by flames. Having synchronized with it all, my mind was being broken. I felt like I was about to go insane. I gritted my teeth and desperately held on to my consciousness. Is this how CoZ had lived her whole life?
見るべき妄想をコントロールするんだ。全てを受信しちゃダメだ。標的を絞り込み、音を頼りにするんだ。
The sound. All while enduring the negative emotions overwhelming me, I listened carefully. What came to me were voices from all around. Isolating them, I searched for the sound. I heard a mechanical sound, one Seroton had said would kill me. The sound had also been inside the memories I'd gotten from reading minds. Senna had destroyed a porter's rucksack that had emitted the sound with her diesel. So if I were to focus on that sound, the illusion that I heard... There were multiple voices. There was more than one porter here.
3人いるみたい。
Holding my breath, I took a step forward. In front of me was the chaotic crowd. Without a trace of order, they moved throughout the scrambled crossing as they pleased, beating each other within an inch of their lives. It would be difficult to go straight through. I hacked the delusions of the people in the direction of the target. And so, little by little, the people in my field of view made way. And there, a path was made for me. There was a single man about 50 meters from me, and all of the obstacles between me and him had now been removed. Our eyes met. He was a plump man in a suit, wearing a rucksack on his back.
1人目。
Taking the shortest path there, I ran straight ahead, through the crowd, without bumping into anyone, all while dragging my D-sword along with me. The porter, having noticed me, frantically turned around and tried to run, but I wouldn't allow it. Just like Senna, I swung my D-sword, a blade longer than I was tall. As always, it felt weightless. I could wield it like it was an extension of my arm. The tip of the D-sword dug into the rucksack, and then, almost as if it had been melted at an unfathomably high temperature, its contents were vaporized. man sank to the ground, cradling his head as he trembled in fear. Without looking at him even one more time, I headed for the second one. Below Wilfront, once again, the obstacles leading up to it began to disappear, and a path was built. The man who stood there was extremely thin, wearing a checkerboard shirt and a pair of jeans. He had long hair, and his skin was alarmingly pale. He seemed to be holding a bag, which he was treating with great care. Noticing me, he tried to blend into the crowd, but before he could do anything, I threw my D-sword. Fly. I formed a delusion. Ignoring all known laws of physics, it flew parallel to the ground, soaring faster and faster. It delicately corrected its path, then pierced the man's back with unmatched accuracy. It emitted a faint light, and the man fell to the ground. Just one more. I approached the man now on the ground, and retrieved my D-sword. The third one was in front of Hachiko. I'd seen that porter countless times by now. Actually, let me be more precise. I had talked to them almost every day. The crowd dissipated, and for the third time, a direct path appeared. And at the end of it was a woman wearing white scrubs. A fact that made her conspicuous as could be.
あなたが3人目です。
Husky.
葉月さん。
Yep.
いや、グリム。
Oh! Oh! It was her.
The nurse who had smiled so gently to me at the hospital was now glaring daggers at me. She had a large handbag with her. Most likely, there was a NoAH 2 terminal inside.
真実を暴くんだ。彼女がしてきたことをこの場にいる人たちに提示すれば、この熱病のような混乱は収まる。
She killed Dr. Takashina, I assume.
What she did.
彼女がグリムなら、これまでの不自然な言動に君は気づいているはず。僕が最初に君に接触した時のことを思い出して。僕は君に貼り付け事件の予言をした。君への継承だった。でも僕よりも先に貼り付けを予言した人間がいる。
I remembered the exchange we'd had at the time. A few moments before Shogun talked to me for the first time, Grim had left the chat room. But right before that, they'd posted an image as a joke. A drawing.
That's where it was.
The very same drawing that Hosky-san had scribbled on the medical chart. The drawing had been very poorly done, but what mattered was what it was depicting. The crucifixion case. Besides, the first time that Grim had talked to me about the new gen case, they had said this. It's all up in your neighborhood, lol. Even though I'd never told them I lived in Shibuya.
Well, how was I supposed to know that?
Even a few hours earlier, Grim had left some comments that made it seem like they knew I was Nishijo Takumi.
You're a celebrity, so you'll be this...
You're a celebrity, so you'll be the center of attention. The second time I'd gone to the hospital, Hosky-san had said,
高階先生はもういません。
And a week later, Dr. Takashina's corpse had been found. I swallowed back my saliva.
あの人が真犯人。
Her mind was right before me. If I looked inward, I could see.
信仰の救いあれ。
Midnight fell on AH Tokyo General Hospital, the place of Hazuki Shino's work. Within one of its operating rooms, the nurse stood nearly still. On the bed lay a young man, Konoe Chizuo. The sleeping pills he had been given had induced a deep coma in him.
信仰の救いあれ
As she repeated the same words over and over like a Buddhist prayer, Hazuki caressed her large, swollen abdomen. Holy. Oh. Oh, guys. It wasn't it wasn't any of the victims. It was the killer's baby. She slowly removed her white scrubs, then sat atop the operating table, scalpel in hand. That is certainly a face. Then, with no anesthesia to speak of, she incised her own abdomen. An incision so masterfully done, it would have earned her incredible praise from surgeons and obstetricians alike. Although she was a mere nurse, her surgical skills were quite remarkable. Even while enduring the uninhibited pain of her self-surgery, the incisions she made in her abdomen was performed with the utmost dexterity. Blood and amniotic fluid flowed from the wound. Her face contorted in pain. Then, after a few grueling moments passed, Hazuki inserted her own hand inside her abdomen. And from within her, she removed a blood-stained fetus. The fetus had yet to reach full maturity, and its forced removal had already ended its life prematurely. Hazuki performed an omphallotomy, cutting the umbilical cord. Upon completion of this, she embraced her child lovingly, then placed it on the stand next to the operating table. With her hands now free, she began suturing her wound. The whole ordeal took nearly an hour to complete. With the sheer amount of pain the procedure procured, any normal person would have fainted long ago. Returning the fetus to her embrace, she stood up from the operating table and approached the man lying down on the bed. With bloodshot eyes, she looked toward the unconscious man's face and thrust the scalpel into his abdomen. The movement was reckless and without care, providing a vast contrast to how delicately and accurately she had torn open her own abdomen before. The pain roused the man, but before he could consider any hope of escape, he realized both his arms and legs were tied securely to the bed. Disregarding the man's screams, Hazuki drew back the scalpel she had used to stab him. It cut through his flesh, tore through his skin. Blood gushed forth, covering her face in crimson.
信仰の救いをあなたに
I'm assuming she didn't kill literally every victim. I'm assuming she's just one of many organized killers working for the church. She neared her hands to the victim's wound, and then she forcefully began to widen it horizontally. The sound of flesh being torn open echoed throughout the operating room. The man's body started violently convulsing as the pain forced him to undergo a cycle of fainting, then waking up again. As she gazed at the gaping wound, Hazuki smiled a gentle smile. She then took her own child, which she had just taken from herself. and forcibly pushed it inside the man's gaping wound.
信仰の救いあれ。
Midnight fell on AH Tokyo General Hospital, the place of Hazuki Shino's work. Within one of its operating rooms, the nurse stood nearly still. On the bed lay her psychiatrist colleague, Takashina Fumio. He was tied to the bed, but this was not the only thing that had been done to him. His cranium had been opened, and his brain was exposed. His skull had been cut cleanly, the line being right above the eyes.
高階先生に信仰の救いあれ。
葉月君、こんなことやめろ。
Takashina was conscious. Due to the effects of the anesthesia, he did not feel any pain from the cut. The other dread he felt kept his eyes open wide, and his body was sweating greatly.
救いあれ。
Ignoring Takashina's pleas for his life, Hazuki retrieved a shiny silver utensil from the pocket of her white scrubs. A utensil that could not be referred to as a traditional surgical tool. I had a feeling that the killer ate it, but, yeah. It was a spoon, an all too ordinary piece of tableware.
何をするつもりだ。よせ、やめろ。
Hazuki reveled in ecstasy. As if enjoying a meal of curry and rice, she took a spoonful of Takashina's brain. Man, it was even worse than just being starved and having his brain removed in that case. She then took the spoon and violently cast the contents onto a stainless steel tray. The pink brain tissue was pulped into a jelly-esque substance. Hazuki thrust the spoon into the brain once more. This time, however, she accumulated even more matter than she had the first time, as she scraped away the brain tissue. Takashina's own brain was getting removed from his body, yet he felt no pain, nor did he lose consciousness. As well as this, the anesthesia had robbed him of any freedom of movement whatsoever. All the man could do was tremble in fear.
これがあなたの記憶なんですね。
So she murdered the man-child victim and Dr. Takashina, which leaves us with 5 more murders to figure out. I'm shocked she's grim, though. I wasn't... Yeah. I guess that's why people say not to look back at your recordings or whatever, because if I did, I probably would have seen Grimm's drawing. That's, I mean, yeah. It was so obvious that she was one of the villains. Just, man. But yeah, I think my multiple killer theory is probably right. Question is now, who did the other killings? And who was the gigolo maniac who murdered the 3 delinquents? Oh, he projected it. Hazuki Shino looked up at the projection in shock. On the Scramble Crossing's 4 massive jumbotrons, her very own memories were being shown. She couldn't even understand how it was being done. Perhaps it was Nishijo Takumi's power as a gigolomaniac.
あなたの記憶です。
Man, you thought she was your best friend, huh?
With his head hung low, and a D-sword in hand, Nishijo Takumi muttered those words.
Wonder why she chose the name Grim.
The riot came to a halt. Silence was now the ruling entity. The thousands of people who had been assailing each other until only a moment ago were now looking up toward the screens. Some went pale, some averted their eyes. Some felt such horror it compelled them to vomit. The mass media were starting to record Husky with their cameras. Countless blinding flashes ensued.
あなたがニュージェネ事件の真犯人だったんだ。
Well, probably not all of it.
私の記憶を映像に投影したんですね。
もう
What
言い逃れはでき
what
ま
was
せん
up
よ。
with her mouth there?
胎児とあなたの DNA を鑑定すればわかることです。どうしてあんなことを。ねえ、クリム。
ナイトハルト、すべては教祖様のお言葉なんですよ。
I think her mouth is glitched.
Husky plunged her hand into the bag resting over her shoulder. From it, she retrieved both a NoAH terminal port and a scalpel. She gripped the scalpel and placed it right against her throat. Due to the nature of her position as a nurse, she knew the location of the carotid artery all too well. Husky smiled at Nishijo Takumi. It was such a kind smile, much like the one she would so oft show her patients.
信仰の救いあれ。
As her own blood gushed forth from her neck, her entire body was painted a bright crimson.
Feel like we probably could have stopped that.
エスパーだ。
救世主だわ。
I didn't know who, but someone had mumbled those words. After seeing the sheer number of gazes piercing through me, I realized that those words were also directed at me. In front of a countless number of people, Husky Shino had committed suicide via slitting her throat. Although calling it a martyrdom might have been more accurate. The choking smell of blood filled the air.
So she said, because the glorious founder ordered it so. And if I recall correctly, the second generational founder, Kuromochi Yudai. What does second generational founder mean?
The riot had now entirely stopped. Husky Shino's memories of the crimes she'd committed, which I had projected directly onto the jumbotrons, ended up being the perfect thing to make the excited parts of the mob quiet down. The shocking nature of what had been displayed left everyone at a loss for words. Even now, Husky Shino's corpse was still bleeding. A number of people then walked up to it and began kicking it. It was the corpse of an atrocious murderer, so there were no respects to be paid here. Next, they might even publicly behead her like it was the Middle Ages. What difference was there between her and the ones kicking her corpse? By their very nature, humans were disgusting, horrible creatures, myself included. The media, like hyenas, were accumulating around anything that could act as a scoop. Roughly half of them had gathered around Husky Shino's corpse, and the other half were surrounding me.
西尾君、お見事でした。
今のは超能力ですか？やはりエスパーだったんですね。すごいです。
今日のこの集まりは初めから真犯人をおびき寄せるためのものだったの？
あなたの超能力は何歳頃に現れたものなんですか？
Now I think about it, Grimm was also the one that told him to go there. So, yep. I mean, I always knew Grimm was gonna be like, it was obvious that Grimm was gonna be like one of the bad guys. I just didn't think Grimm and Hosky were literally the same person.
子供の頃のあだ名は振動とか呼ばれたことある？
今後警察の捜査に協力する予定は？
うちの局の番組に出てくれないかな。
One after the other, endless words of praise were thrown my way.
西条、よくやったぞ。お前すげえよ。
One after the other, endless words of affection were thrown my way.
I'm guessing that the delinquent murder and the crucifixion murder were probably the two most important ones. Oh. Maybe the group dive, too.
I felt hollow hearing those voices. A fabricated image formed by public opinion and a delusionary being. They weren't all too different, were they? Takumi, Takumi, Takumi. It was all coming back. The energy they'd all shown when they'd seen me up on top of Ophir. Unable to take it anymore, I screamed.
手のひら返して英雄扱いかよ、バカみたいな。
Tears started flowing. I felt completely miserable. I felt completely ridiculous. I didn't have it in me to keep going without crying. I wasn't a hero.
僕はキモオタでセーラタンのエロいフィギュアにハーハーしてる変態だ。18歳未満だけどエロゲーして燃えって言ってる男だ。頭の中じゃ街を歩く女どもを裸にひむいてエロい妄想してる。それが僕だ。
Tears and mucus smeared down my face. I forgot I was being broadcasted live across the entire country. It didn't even occur to me that I was shaming myself yet again. I couldn't help it. I was physically incapable of reading the room.
そうだよ。これでも僕は英雄かよ。違う。僕は英雄なんかじゃない。所詮妄想の存在で希望だぜ。一人じゃ何もできないヘタレだ。
The voices around me went quiet. The onlookers sank into silence. The people from the media looked at me dubiously. Within the heart of Shibuya, in the middle of the humongous scramble crossing, only my voice was echoing.
それが僕だ。お前らに他人に僕っていう人間を決めさせない。僕の本質は僕が決める。僕はお前らのおもちゃじゃない。見せ物なんかにはならない。僕にはやるべきことがあるんだ。僕はお前たちなんかのために行動しない。
Rimi's smile appeared in my mind.
僕はただ
For the sake of those I cared about, I was here to fight, then disappear. But before I could voice that, I suddenly noticed that the night sky reflected in the corner of my eye was turning pure white. It wasn't a cloud, nor was it snow falling a little too early in the year. By the time I'd realized it was the same phenomenon from back when the earthquake had hit, it was already too late.
サードメルト予定より早い。
The first thing I felt was the very earth itself beginning to rumble. The ground began to shake. The white in the sky was spreading farther and farther. The very next moment, I was struck with a violent ringing in my ear. I was such an intensely shrill, resonant sound, my head felt like it was about to burst open. Everyone else around me was covering their ears too. And then... the world was dyed completely white.
Welp. Oh, Chapter 10. Chapter 10. Okay then. I'm just gonna keep going.
I was standing atop a body of water. Incredibly clear, transparent water. It was shallow, reaching only my ankles, but it was not cold. Intermittently, the waves whispered in my ears. I was tightly grasping the handles of a wheelchair. Shogun, no. The real Nishijo Takumi was right before me, his head adorned with his knitted cap. He sat ever so slightly hunched forward in his wheelchair. There wasn't a single thing surrounding us. Neither shells buried in the sand, nor seabirds elegantly soaring through the sky. Nothing so expressly emulative of the sea could be seen. There were no signs of life, only the blue sea and the crystal clear sky. The terrain was completely flat all around me, with the horizon stretching as far as the eye could see. This place was not the real world. Together with the sound of breaking waves, I heard Shogun's voice. From where I was standing, I couldn't see his expression. The tone of his voice didn't carry any particular feeling of lamentation. In reality, his words felt like they were simply casual, passing remarks. Small, wrinkled, and withered away. All of his hair had fallen out.
僕の体の成長は発症した10歳の段階で止まってる。そして老化してる。
Was he aging prematurely? That illness was supposed to be rare, affecting only 1 out of every 8 million people.
10歳って。
A gruesome scene etched into my memories began to rise to the surface.
あのバス事故の3ヶ月ぐらい前だよ。僕が発症したの。バス事故は君が。
Is that why he couldn't go?
そうかもしれない。あの時はまだ自分の力についてほとんど自覚はなかったけど。病が発症するよりずっと前。それこそ物心ついた時から。 僕はギガロマニアックスとしての力を使うことができた。それが普通のことだと思ってたよ。意識的にしろ、無意識的にしろ、僕はこれまで何度も力を使ってきた。だから僕の存在としての矛盾が大きくなりすぎちゃったんだ。青い背中から聞いてるだろう。
粒子とともに追生成される反粒子はディソードにストックされていくんだ。反粒子は数学的に言えば過去へ向かうものだから。ストックすればするほどギガロマニアックスには現在の状態とのズレが発生し。
So Takumi here using delusions maybe what's been prematurely killing Shogun then, I guess.
やがてその矛盾により存在としての自己崩壊へ至る。
As he spoke, Shogun didn't move an inch in his wheelchair. What was he looking at? Could he even see at all?
力を使えば使うほどこの病は進行しちゃうんだ。
ギガロマニアックスの力で治せばいいじゃないか。力を使えば病は進行する。端的に言えば力を使ってもプラスマイナスゼロっていうことさ。何も変わらない。どうして僕みたいな肝オタのヘタレ野郎を作ったの？もっと強くて行動的でかっこいいイケメンにすればよかったのに。人を一人、しかもギガロマニアックスの力を使える人間を生み出すのは簡単なことじゃなかった。君を生み出したのって1年近く昏睡しちゃったくらいだよ。僕は未完成だったってわけ。だからこそ君はとても人間らしい。フォローしなくてもいい。本心だよ。
I clicked my tongue. I really did hate this guy.
リミにはいつも力を使うなって怒られたよ。彼女は君を助けたいでしょう。でも僕はリミの忠告に従うわけにはいかない。今の危機的状況は僕の IR2 がきっかけなんだから。
IR2. That strange scribble on the back of my essay.
IR2 はある科学者の目に留まり、やがてのぞみテクノロジー社によって研究が始められた。それがプロジェクトNoAH。言ってみれば人工的にギガロマニアックスの能力を発生させる装置。僕が計画に気づくことができたのはリミと出会ったからなんだ。彼女がひどい拷問を受けていたのはそのプロジェクトの一環だった。NoAHのシステムを効率化するために必要だったのがコード3。ギガロマニアックスが力を使う過程で放出する特殊なNoAHのもの。それを手に入れるためにのぞみの社長ノロセはリミに過酷な拷問を加えた。強烈な負の感情を抱くときギガロマニアックスは力に覚醒し理想度を獲得するからね。
Once again, I remembered Senna's words.
バイオリズムの上昇によって中脳変影系ニューロンのドーパミンが過剰分泌されたとき理想度は現れる。それは危機的な状況や興奮、悲しみ、憎しみ、笑いなど人それぞれだ。ドーパミン分泌量が多ければそれだけ観測しやすくなる。
君が僕にちょっかいをかけてきたのもそのため。うん。君を覚醒させるためにだ。ごめん。
Amy and I weren't the only ones. There were others who had undergone severe mental or physical torture because of Project NoAH. Ayase, Senna, CoZ, and even Nanami. Cruel trials had been laid out for all of them. Also, they could become gigalomaniacs.
IR2 から生み出されたNoAH2は僕が自分の手で止めなくちゃならない。でも僕はこんな体だ。満足に動くこともできない。それに僕のコードサンプルを欲しがる望みから狙われるようにもなっちゃうんだ。
That was to say nothing of how he was hospitalized at AH Tokyo General Hospital, a place which had hidden ties to the Nozomi group.
だから身を隠さなくちゃいけなかった。幻の病室のアミーちゃんか。あそこに入ってこられたのはリミだけだったよ。僕は身動きが取れなくなって、それで僕を作ったのか。
Shogun weakly nodded.
リミには君を消すように何度も言われたんだ。
命を削る行為だからやめろって。でも僕に残された命は長くない。力を使わなくたってあまり差はないんだよね。
So yeah, that's why she wanted to erase Taku. Well, this Takumi, because as long as he continued to exist, Shogun was dying more and more.
His voice was deeply serene. He had a certain sense of wiseness to him. Perhaps it was one you could only get from living out your days under a death sentence.
それに君が覚醒して力を使えるようになれば僕の命は持たないだろうか。僕と君は一心同体っていうこと。そうだね。
でも一つだけ約束。もう妄想はしないね。タクの妄想力はとっても強いから。妄想をすればするほど本物のあなたの命が削られていっちゃうんだ。
If I tried to keep my promise to Rimi, I couldn't go help her. Even if I could, I wouldn't be able to do a thing. It wouldn't matter what I tried. They turned the tables on me in an instant.
君の命はあとどれぐらい持つ？きっと今日か明日までじゃないかな。そこまで。
I was stunned. I hadn't expected him to have so little time left.
僕が覚醒しちゃったから。気にしなくていいよ。君の覚醒は僕にとって本望だから。君が死んだら僕はどうなる？君は僕と一心同体であると同時にリアルブートされたことによって現実の人間になった。生まれ方は特殊かもしれないけど君は人間だよ。僕が消えれば君は助かるの。無駄だよ。せいぜい寿命が数日から数週間伸びるぐらいじゃないかな。でもそんな愚かな選択肢を選ぶのはやめるんだ。君にはノア2を破壊してほしい。そのために力を使うことを遠慮しないでほしい。言われなくても分かってる。君に遠慮するほど僕はお人よしじゃない。
Shogun's shoulders shook faintly as he laughed. Making him laugh was the last thing I'd meant to do, so that annoyed me.
君が目覚めてくれてよかった。勝手な話で迷惑かもしれないけど、あとは君に託す。
Suddenly, the feeling of the wheelchair's handles disappeared. Before I knew it, the wheelchair he was sitting in began to leave me behind. As it moved, it almost seemed to glide across the surface of the water. Its two wheels cut into the water, making waves as they turned. I had no intention of following him. Instead, I absently watched him go.
僕の役目は終わった。
But you didn't do anything.
勝手だね。僕に丸投げ。
I'm joking. He sacrificed everything.
少し疲れちゃって。眠らせてよ。
He turned to me from his wheelchair. As usual, I couldn't read his expression, but his voice showed an intense urgency.
時間がない。急いで。ノロセはノア2を本格的に稼働させた。 こうなったらノア2を直接破壊するしかないんだ。頼んだよ。
And then, as if embraced by a cloud of mist, he began to disappear. The very colors of this mental world slowly began to fade.
君に頼まれる筋合いなんてない。僕は僕自身が決めたことをやるだけ。
The sound of the waves became more distant. Just like Remy had once, I burned this perfect, crystal clear sky into my memories. And then, I gently closed my eyes. A reporter on the radio was reading the news with... A reporter on the news was reading a reporter on the radio was reading the news with a grave tone.
現在までに確認された死傷者の数は233人ですが、この数は最終的に3万人を超えるとみられ、気象庁の発表によりますと、今回の地震の規模は震度7、マグニチュードは 7.8 と関東大震災に匹敵する規模です。渋谷では建物の一部が倒壊し、大規模な陥没も発生している模様です。首都高渋谷線が高架の倒壊により全線通行止め、公共交通機関では山手線など全線が運転を見合わせております。
Static mixed in with the news, until eventually the reporter spoke no longer.
ダメだわ。また聞こえなくなった。
Momose shook and hit the old radio with her hand, but upon realizing she was getting nowhere, she let out a heavy sigh.
古いから使い物にならないわね。
Forcing a smile, she looked to the side. She could see the figures of Kishimoto Ayase and Kusunoki Yua walking along, expressions of fatigue coloring their faces. Both of their uniforms were covered in soot, making it clear how laborious the trek here had been. And yet, the great swords they were holding, their D-swords, did not have a speck of dust on them. Instead, they shone with an unclouded, brutal radiance. After the earthquake, Yua and Ayase had walked back to Shibuya from Yoyogi, went straight to the Frisia office, then joined up with Momose. Waiting for the missing bond to return, the three had stayed near the office throughout the night. Even though the earthquake had put the building on the verge of collapse, they had remained all the same. But in the end, bond had never shown. Momose suggested leaving Shibuya immediately, something Ayase clearly took issue with.
グラジオールが目覚めたの。早く他の黒騎士と合流しないと。
Ayase asserted her feelings of urgency by tugging on Yua's hand, wanting to reach the rebel-laden heart of Shibuya as quickly as they could. In the end, Yua and Momose had no choice but to follow along. It was 7 a.m. Not even an hour had passed since the sky had first begun to brighten. There was not a single trace of the refreshing morning air. The utter mayhem that had been cloaked in darkness was slowly being exposed by the rising sun. And right now, the three girls found themselves in the midst of it. The city of Shibuya had been transformed into the very picture of hell itself. Roads were torn to oblivion. Asphalt protruded from the earth. number of buildings had collapsed, their debris scattered in broken chunks along the sides of the road. Nearly every window that could be seen was broken, and a massive billboard had fallen from its usual perch atop a building's roof. One would not have to walk far to see countless corpses left undisturbed, littered among the chaos at NoAH. For every body Momose witnessed, the same act played out inside her head, one in which she clasped her hand in pity together, in which she clasped her hands together in pity for their demise. But there were just far too many. It was only partway through that she could not take it anymore, realizing the only way to retain her sanity was to ignore them outright. The remaining people that they would occasionally pass by had lost all expression, existing only to stagger aimlessly through the streets. A group of men had come together to try and help the survivors buried beneath the rubble, but it did not seem like there was much they could do without heavy lifting equipment. Momose took another glance at what Yua was holding in her hands. A D-sword. Ayase had explained them to her. Much like magic, they were swords that could be taken out of thin air. What Bon had told her had been true. And yet, Yua seemed only shocked and bewildered about possessing one for herself.
ねえ岸本さん
Ayase, walking slightly ahead of the group, paid no attention to Momose's call. The expression on her face made it clear her patience was wearing thin.
このディソードを持つ人はあなたたちを含めて全部で7人いるっていうこと？
そう。
他の人たちがどこにいるのかわかるの？
わからない。
だったら
感じるのよ。意志を。こっちで間違いないわ。
Ayase was effectively a brick wall. With no other options left, Momose repeated the same words for what felt like the 1000th time.
今むやみに歩き回るのは危ないわ。ひとまず安全なところに避難するべきよ。
ダメよ。時間がないの。
もしかしたら他の黒櫛だったかしら。その人たちだって避難場所にいるかもしれないでしょ。
そうですよ、岸本さん。私も避難場所に行くべきだと。
Ayase suddenly came to a halt, as though Yua's backing had possibly made some sense to her. She narrowed her eyes. And then she looked beyond the rugged Dogenzaka roads that no car could traverse.
え？いたって何？
At the end of Ayase's gaze was a lone girl walking away from the station. She was wearing a Suimei Academy uniform, though it was far more tattered than either Ayase's or Yua's. And with only her left hand, she was holding an enormous cross-shaped sword to her chest. Her gait was markedly unsteady. It looked as though she could collapse at any moment. Momose's body jiggled as she ran toward the girl, toward Nishijo Nanami. The D-sword Nanami was carrying had caught her eye. Instead of prying in order to satiate her curiosity, she focused only on supporting the girl's petite frame.
大丈夫？よく頑張ったわね。今病院に連れて行ってあげるから気をしっかり持つのよ。
Nanami's eyes responded in blank confusion to Momose's words of encouragement.
なんて言ったの？
ナナのバングルどこ？
Both Yua and Ayase belatedly ran up behind Momose.
この子、西条くんの妹さんです。そう、黒騎士の資格があるのもうなずけるわ。匠の妹ね。
二人ともこの子を運ぶのを手伝って。なんとか病院に連れて行かないと。
Yeah, I suppose it's possible that Gigalomania can be genetic.
痛い。
Momose groaned in pain.
右手。右手。
Momose inadvertently glanced towards Nanami's right hand, gasping in surprise when she did.
だってひどい。こんな。
Yua and Ayase were not able to grasp why Momose was so distraught. While the bandage over Nanami's right hand was indeed stained with blood, it did not seem to be that serious of an injury. However, in Momose's eyes, Nanami's hand had been severed from her bandaged wrist. Though medical measures had been taken, it was still an open wound. With a blank look on her face, Ayase attempted to grab Nanami's right hand, but her outstretched hand only passed through empty air. Like a holographic image, Nanami's fingers lacked any substance. A drop of blood trickled down from the red-stained bandage and fell onto Ayase's hand.
もうさ、リミさんに助けてもらって。リミさんって崎畑リミさん
知ってるの？
ええ、西条くんのお友達の。
Yua had always held the suspicion that Takumi was the true new gen culprit, so she knew a fair amount about his background. This also extended to those that would frequently come into contact with him. Therefore, it was only natural for her to have conducted investigations on Nishijo Nanami and Sakihata Rimi. In contrast to Yua, Ayase abandoned her typical aloof expression, grimacing at the mere mention of Rimi's name.
崎畑リミの7人の黒騎士の一人。え、そうなんですか？
Ayase recalled yesterday's incident at the hospital. She could remember being addressed by Rimi's apologetic voice.
岸本さん、タクに近づかないで。目覚めさせたくないの。君には自覚がないの。黒騎士の一人としての。私が一人で何とかするから。とても美しいわ、その思いは。でもそれは大いなる意志の望むことじゃない。私も望んでいないわ。あなた一人に全てを背負わせるなんて。
黒騎士云々の話は今は置いときましょう。とにかく早く病院に連れて行かないと血が止まらないわ。
Momose gently placed her handkerchief on Nanami's open wound.
すごい熱だし、顔色も悪い。急がないと。
お兄に会いたいよ。
Tears trickled from Nanami's vacant eyes. Right at that moment, something happened. In an instant, the highway they were standing on collapsed with a deafening roar. They all lost their footing, helplessly entering freefall at gravity's mercy. To them, it was like they were falling into the deepest, darkest, lowest circle of hell. Losing herself in that illusion, Momose raised a scream so loud it betrayed her age entirely. When I came to, dark... Oh, this is Takumi, I think.
When I came to, dark clouds covered the sky overhead. The dark night had come to an end before I knew it. There wasn't a shred of blue sky in sight. I was hit with a wave of depression. The sky could not have been more gloomy. Countless sirens from ambulances and fire trucks blared off in the distance. A multitude of helicopters were in the sky, circling the city like flies. My head was racked with pain, like someone was putting a jackhammer to it. It felt even worse than after the last earthquake. I tried to remember what happened before my memories had cut off. The sky turning white, Shogun mentioning the third melt. I ignored my headache and stood up, only to lose all words. The usual scenery was entirely absent. It was like a scene out of the end of the millennium thing that everyone had been freaking out about almost a decade ago. Shibuya was on the verge of collapse. Traffic lights, roadside trees, and buildings had all fallen to the ground. The Jumbotrons, the most iconic part of Scramble Crossing, really had cracks ripping through them and were entirely silent. The stairs leading down to the subway were buried beneath the rubble of their own ceilings. The guards around the Yamanote line had fallen apart, and the railway had been ripped to shreds. More people than I could count were lying on the ground. Blood and guts clung to the scattered debris. Some remained motionless, some moaned in pain, some screamed for help. Some were covered in dust, crawling on all fours without a care as to how it made them appear. Some only cried, tightly cradling another motionless body in their arms. I could smell all the blood, the rusty smell mixed with the stench of something burning. Everything was covered with the thick odor of dust. Far in the distance, plumes of black smoke rose like smoke signals. This was the power of NoAH too. It was horrifying. This was already on the scale of a weapon of mass destruction. I now understood why Shogun wanted to put an end to this. Come to think of it, where was Shogun? When I came back to myself, I surveyed my surroundings. There was a bent wheelchair lying pretty close to me, and right beside it, his delicate frame was lying there. I ran over to him in a panic and lifted him up. He didn't react. Not even his inner voice said anything. Oh God, was he dead? I put my ear to his mouth. As faint as it was, he was still breathing. But he was still unconscious. I tried hitting him lightly on the cheek a few times, but to no avail. If I didn't know where it was, there was no way I could make it in time to save Rimi or Nanami. I should have asked him that when I had the chance. Clicking my tongue, I took my phone out of my pocket. It was off, and despite my many attempts to get it working, it stayed that way. It was nothing more than garbage now. Aside from Shogun, who else would know where to find it? Think, goddammit. I didn't have time for this. While I was wandering around doing absolutely goddamn nothing, that Norose guy could be ready to kill Rimi at any moment. Then who? Who was someone I could trust? Someone who knew about NoAH too.
君たちは特別な存在だ。中でも一番特別なのは、その目、誰の目を産み落とした少年。
畑野一世。
Senna's dad, one of the founding members of Project NoAH, the person who is nowhere to be found right now. Not to mention I'd never met him before. Wait, it was possible we'd passed each other on the street before, actually. CoZ had told me all about his homeless lifestyle, with a guy always wandering around Shibuya.
見つけるしかない。
With the surprisingly light body of Shogun on my back, I mindfully made my way through the debris. I didn't have a clue as to where Hatano-san was, but I didn't have a choice. I had to find him, no matter what.
Okay, I'm gonna stop here for now. Man, so we know one of the new gen killers, and Shibuya's going to shoot. Yeah. Man, the truth behind Man-Child was even more disturbing than I could have possibly imagined. All I can wonder is, like, who the father even was, and why her name was Grim, I guess. But, yeah. Well, at this point, I mean, I guess, yeah, it's possible that, Suwa is one of the culprits as well. Question, just who is it? Now that I think about it, though, that confrontation between him and, Husky was pretty weird, thinking about it. Trying to force information out of her, but she was... well, I suppose it's possible that he was just playing the role he was given, and, she didn't actually... No, neither of them knew that the other was a member of the church, I guess. Yeah. I will see you guys next time. And hopefully we can, save the world.